1. Let's start with the background information first. We have a local dog park that divides the small dogs and big dogs into their own areas. The dog park consists of a mix of grass and wood chips. The big dog side consists mostly of 50% wood chips and grass. The small dog area was mostly grass with 15% clay. I have 2 small dogs that I take there every day for over 2 years now. When we first arrived, it was in decent condition, but ever so slowly the grass would disappear and more of the clay would be on the small dog park area. Eventually, I had enough of the girls coming home red. They were 2 white fluffs. So over the years, I have touched up the small dog area with fescue, Bermuda, and now a bit of rye grass. This way, it should have a mix of all year-round grass covering most of it. This spring, when I was touching up the spots in the small park, the big dog community saw me working and asked me if the city will ever touch up or improve the big dog area, since it's mostly dirt and some wood chips. I explained that I am not affiliated with the city and was doing this in my own free time and money. They were surprised and asked if I wanted to help the big side. So, after looking at it and explaining, I would need to first randomly seed to effectively create a heat and activity map to see where the dogs play the most. Some were intrigued and chipped in some cash. That was in spring. Let's just say I've spent more money on both sides than initially anticipated 2 years ago. Today's incident. This morning I decided to try and plant some winter ryegrass on the big side to keep making some progress in the winter, and then switch back to Bermuda in late spring. But this lady was angry that I was doing it. I explained what I have been doing for the last few months and showed the areas that had now already grass in them thanks to my work over spring and summer. She hated it since the grass looked patchy and wasn't consistent yet. She preferred uniform wood chips. I told her that's fine, and she told me I couldn't do it. I told her I could since the city wasn't doing anything and they knew I've been working in the park. She insisted that she knew the park manager for the city, to which I agreed, me too, since we've talked around 5 times with him this year. His only concern was that he did not want me to impersonate being a city worker, which I've never done. The community called him out on his Facebook comments how bad the park was prior to my touch-ups, and that it was outrageous to go after an individual who was trying to improve the park. FYI, we are a rather fancy neighborhood in the greater metro area. I told the lady the park manager knew me and had never prohibited me from trying it. His primary concern was me never impersonating being a city employee, or that I should be aware it might not work since it was an active dog park. Both of these were obvious, and I never harbored delusions of grandeur of instant success. He also knows I have worked out in the small dog area for 2 years now. But none of this mattered to her, and she kept telling me to stop and leave. The following must have been some divine comedy moment. So while leaving to touch up the small dog park area instead, a smart-ass big dog in the park grabbed the seed bag and ripped it in half, spilling the grass seeds in the big dog park. I started laughing and said, "Guess I have to mulch it into the dirt under the wood chips now." All the while she left and kept yelling me to leave outside of the dog park. 2. In the mid-1970s, when I was a small child, too young to go to school, I often accompanied my parents on various errands. One such place we frequented was the bank. Banks were just as boring for kids then as they are now. Bored children stand in line with their parents while there is nothing to do, and nothing interesting to look at. Except back then there was one thing that made the waiting worth it. That came in the form of the penny gumball machine. It stood just inside the door, its glass globe encasing 100 gem-stoned orbs of sugary goodness, in which the flavor of bliss was guaranteed to last for no longer than 1 minute. Only a penny could free a coveted jewel of chewy sugar. The agony of standing in line at the bank could be eased if one only possessed the key that cost 1 whole cent. I stood in line with my dad, bored but being good, and staring at that happy little machine by the door. In the line next to us was a mother and her little boy. The little boy was behaving like an absolute pill. He would neither stand still nor be quiet despite his mom's best efforts to calm him without losing her cool. My dad reached the front of the queue, and as the transaction was being made, the nice teller handed me a penny for the machine. I quickly made my way to possess a ball of gum, dropped the penny in the slot, pushed the lever, and out rolled a beautiful little gumball, which I immediately popped into my mouth, and then I returned to stand next to my dad. It was at this time the mother and her squirrely son reached the head of their line, and I heard the boy ask the teller for a penny. He was declined. Pointing at me, the boy said,
"But that girl got a penny."
The teller replied, "She got a penny for her good behavior. I only give a penny to kids who behave."
"Mom!"
the boy whined. "I told you to be still," said his mom. "Maybe next time you can do better." The boy scowled and muttered a bit to himself, but he accepted the situation as the mother and the teller interacted. It was at this time that my dad turned to leave. Now, I was a naturally good little girl. I knew that actions had consequences, and I tried hard to avoid conflict. However, even the best of children cannot resist the temptation of a golden moment of on-the-spot opportunity to just be a little bit rotten, and, let's be fair, how could I just ignore it? As I walked past that scowling boy without making eye contact, I smiled and open-mouthed slack-chewed my gum at him as loud and obnoxiously as I could. He screamed, "Mom!" I felt a gentle nudge from my dad's hand on my back to urge me to walk faster, away from the situation and out of the bank, before anyone could react. No, I did not get a penny the next time I was there, and I accepted my consequences like a good girl, but it was worth it. 3. So, this entitled chick and my fiancé have an odd past before I even met him. In high school, he used to have a big crush on her, but she wasn't interested in him that way. They did become good friends, though, and dated other people. After graduation, he went on to a serious relationship, and so did she. She was dating another woman, and asked him if he'd be willing to donate sperm so that they could have a baby. He agreed, as long as they worked out a proper legal contract so that he wouldn't be legally or financially responsible for the child. She agreed to this. Sometime later, fiancé and I started dating. He informs me of this agreement, asking what I think and if it'd be an issue for us. I say that I think he's being smart about it, and I respect that this was an agreement made to help a friend before I was in the picture. So I don't have an issue and I'm okay with it. This was the case until it appeared that her relationship was failing. Yep, she was one of those "surely a baby will fix it" types. Both my fiancé and I become more worried the more unhinged her texts become. Her relationship ended, but now she was insisting a baby would help her loneliness. While this was happening, my fiancé and I were getting serious and moving into an apartment together. One day, while we're out near my parents' house, my fiancé gets some alarming texts from her. She's in his dad's house, and his dad isn't home. Fiancé is texting her questions, and she's replying casually as if she's doing a very normal thing. Apparently, she had let herself in with a spare key he had given her years ago for emergencies. When asked what she was doing there, she claimed she was just spending time with his cat. His cat, who isn't very social. She also was taking pictures of his childhood pictures hanging on the wall so that she could have an idea what her kids will look like. We're both incredibly disturbed, and I tell my fiancé that I now have a stipulation to moving in together. That entitled chick is not allowed to know our apartment address. She's still baby crazy and starts demanding my fiancé finally donates already. Never mind the contract, she needs the baby. He gives a hard no at this because not only is she clearly mentally unwell, but we know she doesn't have the financial resources for a kid. I 100% back his choice. He tells her he can't do it, and she can go elsewhere. For our time at the apartment, we lived in blissful silence from her insanity. That came crashing down a month after we moved into a house. Apparently she was in a relationship that whole blissful period, because she just got broken up with. Fiancé asks me if she can come over because she was taking it really hard. I was incredibly hesitant, but kept thinking that we did now have a large house, and it'd be unfair to keep his friend away forever if they are good friends. He vouched for her that she seemed to be doing much better now, plus it had been 2 years. So I agreed to give her a chance. I finally met the woman I demonized as some psycho obsessed with my fiancé, and she seemed normal. I ended up spending more time with her than my fiancé since she's not great with emotional situations, and it felt like we became fast friends. She spent a few nights over while her ex was at their apartment, and we actually had a lot in common. Over several months we became pretty close friends. We'd confide life issues in each other. I believed her excuses for every red flag showing she's unhinged. Towards the beginning, her ex still wanted to be friends but wanted space. Entitled chick kept trying to ask for hugs or be clingy, pushing her ex's boundaries because she wasn't over her. Some time later, she decided to try hooking up with a man and told me she thought she may be pregnant. I started asking what she was going to do since she was struggling to pay for even herself, and if she told the guy. She looked like the thought hadn't even occurred to her and muttered something about how she didn't think he'd want a kid. I was shocked, and when I told her she has to tell him if she gets a positive test, she suddenly agreed, as if that was her plan all along. Luckily, in the end, she wasn't even pregnant. After a few months of living in her apartment alone, she told me that she started hearing a voice that isn't hers. I suggested she should see a psychiatrist since it could be a form of schizophrenia or something similar, which is entirely manageable with professional help. She acted like she was considering this advice, but nothing came of it, and she never mentioned it again. Did I mention this chick is baby crazy? She truly cemented her dedication of her dream of becoming a single mom, not just by texting me every couple of weeks about her goal of doing so and moving away, but also by showing me her baby stuff. Oh yeah, she was prepped for any day she might have a baby, a 44-gallon-long storage bin filled to the brim with baby clothes of varying sizes and genders, plus a regular 31-gallon storage bin mostly full of baby toys, books, and shoes. Now, I don't personally have any close friends with kids, but I have never met anyone with this much baby stuff pre-child. Well, anyways, one summer day I was having a rough time. I was recovering from an illness that took its toll on me, and we had a roommate at the time who was like living with a child. Entitled chick offered to come over, clean, and listen to me vent. She cleaned up the mess I couldn't, and we ended up going on a drive to talk in private. I confided in her that my fiancé was back to having a huge problem giving money to people again. He did this in the past but stopped when I asked him to because no one paid him back. He learned some of them lied and used the money for drugs, and half of the beggars weren't even his friends. Plus, this time was larger amounts in the hundreds. I was sobbing that we were months behind on rent when we shouldn't be. She seemed sympathetic but annoyed at him. She instantly suggested I dump him. I thought she was jokingly trying to be the LOL dump him friend, but she was serious. I was genuinely baffled that she suggests breaking up when our lives are so entangled together at this point, and this was our first ever serious point of contention. She started trying to comfort me with, "He's my best friend and I love him, but..." and just trash-talking him. I was getting annoyed because the things she was saying were just mean and two-faced. About a month or two after our serious talk, I'm checking my fiancé's bank account to see if he stayed true to his word. Nothing shady, he'd given me permission to view his bank account whenever. What do I see? Hundreds of dollars sent to entitled chick. $500, tons of small $10 or $20 amounts, $200, $300, just nonsensical amounts. He says the $500 was because she said she was at risk of being evicted. I tell him that we can't afford to pay her rent while we're struggling to eat. He agrees to stop sending her money. I'm mostly hurt that she would take advantage of both my fiancé and me at this point. She knew he had a problem, and that we were struggling financially too and took advantage of us. She knew that I was incredibly stressed about her situation, and she didn't care. One night she keeps bugging my fiancé for $10. He tells me he's just going to send it to her to shut her up. I tell him okay, but I'm going to call her out for it. I tell her to stop begging my fiancé for money, and she replies, "Well, I don't appreciate you calling it begging. And I get paid Friday, and I'm going to pay it back. I don't like owing people money. It's who I am." I know she isn't going to, but I back down and we play friendly again. She makes an odd jab when I say that I'm just making sure that she's not taking advantage of my fiancé like other users in his life have. About how she's been around longest, longer than any of his girlfriends, which I ignore because I don't feel threatened by her. By Friday, I keep reminding my fiancé to bug her about the $10 since she made a point of telling me she doesn't like owing people money. Well, apparently she didn't like that either, because she would just ignore those messages. Come Sunday, she's talking about making a will. This was presumably due to fainting spells she claimed to be experiencing at the time. We don't know if these were real, but this was the day before her doctor's appointment, which she claimed before that she hoped they would tell her she's dying at. We're both done with her dramatic shit at this point, and after reading her text aloud, I jokingly say, "So about that $10, and we both crack up. And then he sends, "Why, I will. Also, about that $10? She left him on red. Like 2 days later, fiancé and I are talking about how we couldn't believe she still hasn't replied or said literally anything. Fiancé checks other social media and discovers that she's unfriended him on Snapchat and Facebook. I check, and she did the same to me. I'm annoyed but not too surprised at this point because crazy's gonna be crazy. But when I look over at my fiancé, he's genuinely really hurt. He doesn't say it, but I can tell she helped him reaffirm his fear that his friends only like him for his money. It does say that she was one of his longest friends, and he can't believe she'd really do that over $10. I'm seeing white rage now. Fiancé goes to sleep sad, and I realize I can still message her on Facebook even though we're not friends. I decided to play dumb and ask if we did something. She claims she's taking a break from social media. This was an obvious lie because 1, she was sending me TikToks just the day before, 2, I saw she had a mutual friend that is still, 3, literally who takes a break by unfriending their friends, and 4, literally, like the day after this convo, she updated her cover photo and profile pic. I point out the fact that we still have a mutual friend. She claims she's going from the top down. No idea what that means. Not alphabetical, as my name would come before mutual. I straight up say that it seemed kind of like fiancé asked about the $10 and this happened. She says no, she's just been super busy with work and she's planning to move. I stop replying. The next day, I catch our roommate, new roommate from before, up with the drama. Because I'm still seething with rage, so he goes, "What's her name?" And I tell him. He pulls up her Facebook and starts messaging her. He says, "Hey, you got that $10? And she replies, "Who the fuck is this?" "I thought you were taking a social media break. Interesting." "I keep my messenger open for friends and family." And she blocked him. We both laughed at how dumb it was, hoping it wouldn't cause fiancé too much trouble. He enters the kitchen where we were talking. And roommate goes, "Listen, so I did message entitled chick." And fiancé is like, "Oh, I know, I've been hearing about it. She sent me screenshots." We all laugh about it and then she gets to me. She sends me a screenshot of her having sent fiancé $9 and says, "Also, I don't appreciate being bugged by your roommate, seeing as I've explained to your fiancé why it took me a moment to pay it back." That's when I decided the kid gloves were off. I took my time and sent back this. I didn't ask him to, I was just talking to him and he decided to do it on his own. Also, it took that to get you to explain anything, so don't make it sound like you explained to my fiancé first, then my roommate messaged you. It's kind of fucked up that you ignore my fiancé and me every time we mention the $10 you owe him. Like the fact you made a whole big deal out of telling me I get paid Friday, and I was gonna give it back. And how I don't like owing people money, it's who I am. To make me seem like a bitch for calling you out for asking my fiancé for more handouts, but then just ignored every reminder so you don't even have the excuse that you forgot it's telling. Like if you didn't get paid, you could have just said so and not been like, "Ooh, I can't read suddenly, I don't know." She didn't reply. I waited for a few hours with a typed list of things I wanted to say before likely being blocked and then sent it. Essentially, it was a long multi-paragraph wall of text in which I told her that we knew she unfriended us over this, how much it hurt my fiancé, how we both have noticed her manipulative tendencies now, how it's not about the money itself because if it was, we'd be hounding her about that $500, how the real money issue is the fact that she asked my fiancé for money knowing he has a problem saying no, we can't afford it, and it's putting stress on our relationship. I specifically mentioned how she borrowed $500 after I had literally sobbed in the car about how bad our finances were, and she still took advantage of him. I may have gone a bit petty over this and mentioned it being a recurring trend that she goes crazy after a breakup. I told her exactly why she never got to see our apartment. I directly called her out for entering my fiancé's dad's house without permission. I called her a mooch and told her that she needs mental help. And she left me on red. Not gonna lie, a part of me kinda hoped she would at least try to argue. I didn't want to believe someone could actually be so cruel to others and hang them out to dry. She went on to text my fiancé as if nothing had happened. She vaguely stated that she wasn't comfortable coming over anymore, but wouldn't say why when asked. About a week later, she tried asking for $150 again, but obviously my fiancé was having none of it. He played oblivious just like I used to when she tried dialing up the self-pity. I asked him to block her after this, and he did. Another 2 weeks went by and she texted him from a new number playing the same old game. This time she tried laying it on hard by claiming she texted the suicide hotline and how depressed she'd been over her financial struggles. Fiancé just replied by agreeing since we've also had bad financial struggles and his anxiety has been awful, and he shared his intrusive thoughts. I guess that wasn't the answer she wanted from her best friend, though, because she switched the topic. She started saying that he should really break up with me, because we're just not a good match. He blocked her again. When he told me that, I just burst out laughing. I knew she was trying to break us up, and I finally had my confirmation. I just never imagined it would be such a bad attempt. By the way, I added up how much she borrowed just in 2022. $1,670. That's minus the $16 total she paid back. 4. I came home to find a note from my Karen neighbor that she had hand-posted into my letterbox. It wasn't in an envelope, and I saw her on my doorbell camera doing this. I've had problems with this Karen over my driveway since I moved into my house in February 2021. Also, other problems with her on other things, and my other neighbors had past problems too. First time I met her is when she tried to tow my car out of my driveway, on the first day of me starting to move into my new house. I heard a loud bang right in front of my house. I went to check and saw a tow truck lining up to my car in my driveway, police officers and Karen. I shouted from my front door and got police and Karen's attention. Our discussion was basically, 1. Karen came home to find an unrecognized car in her spot and called the police straight away instead of knocking on my front door. 2. Karen didn't know that the new house owner has started to move in. 3. She had a deal with the previous owner of my house, who didn't drive, to let Karen use a single-car driveway. 4. She believes that deal should still be honored, but since I am the new owner and don't know anything about it, that deal is over. I had problems with her still parking in my driveway, and it stopped after I got it towed. After I had extended my driveway to fit 2 cars side by side, still in front of my house and not going over any property lines, Karen demanded the second spot in my driveway. After I said no, she still had the nerve to still go ahead and use that second spot. She stopped again after I towed it again. Also, she had attempted to tow my girlfriend's car from my driveway. Now onto this note from Karen. In her note, she doesn't ask to use my driveway for her guests. It says she has already arranged for her guests to use my driveway from the 20th of December to the 2nd of January. She basically told me to park on the street so her guests can use both spots. Also, not to unnecessarily tow their cars. I've just been over to her house and reminded her it's my driveway. She's not got any authority to use my driveway, and said the second I see an unauthorized car in there, I'll get them towed off. She said she will call the police. I just said go ahead and send the police to my house when they turn up. I got a Ring doorbell that has footage of me telling Karen no and to stop her using my driveway in the past. Also got cameras on my driveway with footage of the past problems with her. I've still got the note about her guests using my driveway. She has called the police on me for parking in my own driveway, and the both times I towed her car from my driveway. I came here to rant this out before I go on a date with my girlfriend. I got this angry mood out of somewhere. From past problems I've had with this Karen, I've gotten email addresses of 3 recurring police officers that come whenever she, another neighbor, or me calls. I sent them a pic of Karen's notes and explained that I didn't agree to this and reminded them of the past problems I'd had about her in my driveway. After I sent the police emails, I sent the pic of notes to the other neighbors, who had also had problems with her. Found out 2 other neighbors with 2-car driveways had received similar notes too, but they haven't confronted her right away. Yesterday was when the neighbors and myself were available to have a chat with her. Well, we had a police officer there as a witness to have a chat too. We basically reminded her that our driveways are our property. We all have towed her and her family's cars. She has a husband and 2 older kids that drive and own cars. They have a single-car driveway where they can have 4 cars, and said the second we see her guests parked in our driveways, they will be towed. The police officer reminded her of past problems and the fines she had to pay. Hopefully this might be the slap that Karen needs and she finally gets some common sense. She might tell her guests not to park in our driveways, but from past experience, something tells me she will still go ahead with her original Christmas plans. 5. These are 2 little stories about an entitled woman, Karen, and an entitled man, Ken. I just remembered the Karen recently and thought because these 2 stories are so short, I'd put them together in one post. So the first story was around 9 years ago. I was on the bus from school and was standing because all the seats were taken. The bus came to a stop at the next bus stop. Some people came on like normal, but the last person, a woman that was a bit corpulent, got on the bus and began speaking in a loud, demanding voice. "So everybody, I have an illness." I don't remember what she had. "So who's going to give up his seat for me?" I thought to myself, what kind of behavior is this? If you need a seat, you could ask politely for it, but not in that tone. But my introvert self only thought that, didn't say it. So, after 1 minute of complete silence, which felt like an eternity, one student stands up and gives her his seat. His buddy, who now sees the woman and what he would be facing for the ride, stands up as well and gives up his seat. The whole time the bus driver didn't start to drive. The Karen sat down and offered an old lady the other seat. The old lady sits next to her, and to be honest, I wouldn't like to swap with her. She looked really cramped next to the Karen. Even as an introvert, I might not have given her my seat if I had one because of her attitude. Ask me nicely, and I'm willing to do nearly everything for you. But maybe I'm in the wrong here? P.S. I'm not fat-shaming, I'm overweight myself, and have my visible fat, but that woman was way back in the unhealthy section. My second story was 2 weeks ago. For background information, in Germany there is an unwritten rule that if you get on the train, you firstly let all the people get off the train, then you get on the train. That is a much more efficient and safer way, so back to the story. I was on the train to university. The train pulled into my station, and I was standing in front of the door. At that day, I really had a bad mood because of several things going on in my life right now. While the train prepared for the opening of the doors, I could clearly see a man also standing in front of the door on the other side. Ken was standing ready to get on the train as fast as possible. Now my bad mood kicked in. As the door opens, Ken tries to get on the train. I purposely bumped him with my shoulder so he couldn't get on right away. While doing that, I said that you first let all the people get off the train. He didn't like what I was doing. He turned around looking at me angry and said something in a foreign language, which probably wasn't nice, and gestured with his hand. A woman sat next to him, probably his wife or girlfriend, held him back. I loudly repeated myself, but he kept gesturing and saying words in his language which I didn't understand. I walked off the train station to my bus without looking back. I know that I was the asshole in this situation, but I was so pissed at that moment that so many people give a crap about everyone else just for him to try to be the first on the train. Looking at it afterwards, I could have handled the situation better, but what happened happened. I would like to know how it is in other countries. Do you have unwritten rules like that, or maybe even laws? Please let me know. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 87. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go around, please do share that video around on all your social media. Thank you kindly. Also, if you take a look in the description, you'll see all the lovely Hellfreezer-related links, You can find me on Twitter, and you'll find links to my Patreon and my merchandise shop if you feel so inclined. Some nice stuff on there. Okay, let's see. Let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: means of transport that do not exist yet, but you hope will exist one day in the future. For me, they have these things in the show Westworld. It's like, it's basically like a helicopter jet kind of thing, but it's the size of a car, right? And they just touch down, you get on it, and it takes you wherever you need to go. I want those. It'd be really fast because you can avoid traffic, and they're quite roomy as well. Plus, you don't need to know how to fly it because it's all done by artificial intelligence. Because, Westworld is about robots and things. I'm going to miss that show. Cancelled recently. Anyway, maybe there's some cool ones I haven't thought of, or maybe I've forgotten about. I think we all want self-driving cars. Unless you don't like the idea of self-driving cars, which is understandable. It can be scary. But I'm down for it. But maybe some other cool ones that you'd like to mention in a comment below. I'll look very much forward to reading them. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.